I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
I love to see my people party with me, man. Good to see you, Black Brown, Sweet Nikita, Miss Rhonda. Hey, happy birthday, Miss J. Hey, Rhea, Sweet Sharita. Party with me all night long. Say what? That's right, baby. Bring it to the front. Hey, Janine, well, guess what? Hey, when I see you, yeah, I get a little happy. Hey, Black Brown, I get a little happy when I see you. What? Baby, when I see you, yeah, I get a little happy. Hey, Francine, I get a little happy when you party with me. Well, guess what? When I see you, yeah. Hey, Jay, hey, Randy, I get happy when you party with me. Guess what? When I see you, yeah. Hey, Cole, I get a little happy when I see you. What? When I see you, yeah. Listen, fellas, I put your picture on my mirror. Start to blush when somebody said your name. And my stomach is a pain. See you walk in my direction, I go the other way. I start to stutter when I speak. Try to stand, but my knees go weak. What's happening to me? Anybody can you tell me what it means? I lay my head on my pillow. He got me staring out the window. We're gonna stop for a sign. That's the reason why. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey, see you. Hey, Marlon, you sexy boy. Hey. Oh, no. When I see you. Hey, fellas, listen. I scribble X and O's on my notebook, checking out my hair and my nails look. I feel myself up in the zone. I get nervous when you call. Say I'm not home. See your face. I hear my favorite song. Should I send an email at home? I wonder if you know, or do you have a clue? Yeah. I lay my head on my pillow. He got me staring out the window. We're gonna stop for a sign. That's the reason why. Yeah. Oh, yeah. See you. Marlon, so sexy boy. Oh, no. When I see you.
what I like, what I like, what I like.
Can I hear them from here? No.
You know what? They can't hear me. He can't hear me because my mic was muted. So everybody on the live stream, my apologies. Welcome to the live stream. My bad, everybody. Ty, can you hear me? Can we hear you, Todd?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Loud and clear.
Hello. All right. Hello.
So yeah, right. Okay, everybody, and apologies to everybody in the chat on the live stream. Thank you all as well for joining us, and apologies.
Trying to be here in person, but Ice was stick up in Jersey. Todd's not the one you want getting captured by Ice. Ice don't want it to Todd. That's really what it gave them a break for the night. That's what we're here to do. Give Ice a break.
So the way I figured we would just do this is just keep it a little bit relaxed and invite some conversation. I'm just going to say a few minutes of introductory remarks to get us all caught up. And then I definitely want to have as much of a dialogue with the folks here and even those online as well. So again, thank you very much. And if I can, what I'll do is just so essentially we are here talking about the myth and propaganda of Black buying power. The book came out in 2020, the second edition in 2023. The first version is still available for free via PDF if you haven't had a chance to review the work yet. For those who have, thank you all very much for your support. And I definitely appreciate the engagement. The goal of the book, of course, began with my time here, mostly in DC, doing grassroots political organizing and just seeing how often, despite we would get all these beautiful and radical analyses, the persistence of this buying power mythology just kept coming up, even in again, among the most left-wing, progressively thinking revolutionary spaces. This mythology would still come up with the idea of being different in those spaces, that, well, at least with a radical ideology, we could use this buying power for something good. But as I've been trying to argue, even well-meaning analyses that are built on frauds or mythologies or inaccuracies are going to lead to unsuccessful outcomes. So the attempt of the book was just simply to close the gap narratively between what was being said in popular press about Black people and economics and what was the reality as reflected in the data. And that's why with the second edition of the book, some political differences notwithstanding, I was very happy to have Professor Derek Hamilton write the preface to the second edition, someone who is well-versed in the economy and race and has all the bona fides. And I did underestimate what I thought would be the more positive impact of his presence in the second edition. It didn't seem to overcome all of the resistance to the argument. But I'm glad, but glad nonetheless that he was willing to support the work and make room for the argument to be welcomed and given some validity beyond just my own research. And because my background is in media studies and Africana studies, a lot of people who were critical of the work were looking for something coming from me around the economics and the economic analysis, not fully understanding that my point was to, again, address the narrative gaps between what was being said about Black people in press and mainstream media outlets targeting Black audiences, and what is the reality that I was reading and researching in the data and the reporting. So just very quickly, essentially, buying power is not real. It's a mythology born out of marketing and advertising. It's born out of a political necessity to convince Black people and the rest of the labor force that there are potential avenues for uplift and closing inequality and unequal gaps and divides, and also with the ultimate goal of suppressing radical political organizing and the tendency among oppressed communities to radically politically organize. In other words, telling the exploited labor classes and Black people in particular, hey, if you just circulate your dollar and buy it, start a business and invest and have greater levels of financial literacy, you won't need all this radical political movement stuff. You don't need to do all that old, passe stuff. We can just move on and really take advantage of an economy, especially given now with all this resurgence of Black capitalist narratives through a lot of celebrity and their friends, with this argument being, those struggles of the past are no longer necessary. They don't exist. Racism isn't the same anymore. Few will go so far as to say it doesn't exist, but they will absolutely say that it has changed. It is not the block the inhibitor that it used to be. When in reality, all the data shows Black people in this country and elsewhere in the diaspora are headed towards zero net wealth, 15 cents on the dollar compared to whites, and so on and so on and so on. All the economic indicators show that Black people are headed in the wrong direction, despite some of the popular claims to the otherwise. So lastly, I just want to say, and I really do want to get to the discussion, that I have some forthcoming work coming out that is looking to extend this argument and talk more about Black capitalism as a narrative, as a psychological counterinsurgent narrative that is, again, meant to perform these same functions. And that is something that I would like to talk more about and advocate more going forward, that these ideas around economics and specifically Black capitalism are better understood as psychological warfare propaganda, not actual avenues towards tangible material change. So with that, I got my favorite co-host with me. I got my family here, comrades, friends, folks who've been willing to come out on a Sunday. It's great to see you folks online. Thank you as well. And I thought we could just talk a little bit about some of the responses I've gotten maybe over the years, or any comments, questions, queries, conundrums, catechisms, cacophony, calumny, etc. that you all might have. Todd, why don't we start with you? Since you joined us, anything you would want to raise as a comment, question, query, a thought?
I would. But first, let me say I'm really happy to be at this event, Dr. Ball. I don't think you get honored enough for the work that you do. And I'm glad that you have this space, this public space, where people can physically express their thanks for all the work you do. Mark and I know all the things that you do that you don't discuss that help other people, right? And so I'm glad that you're getting this moment. I wanted to say that first. The second thing I want to say is that I think we're all about to learn a lot about capitalism because of what my biographical subject, Mumia Abu-Jamal, he has referred to AI as the new digital working class. See, now we're going to be up against a new working class that doesn't need sleep, doesn't need food, and doesn't need pay, and can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we even see with the Disney layoffs that it doesn't matter how many billions these companies make. If they think they can make more of the same, they will lay off anybody. Marvel just laid off their entire full-time special effects department. The entire department they laid off. Why? Because they can replace that labor with people who can bid for jobs at 1/3 the money for more work and have AI supplement that. So we're in a very interesting period right now. And so I wanted to hear your view of how AI and this, again, what Mumia calls this digital working class is going to affect your argument.
Yeah, I don't think it, I mean, I think, so one of the biggest criticisms that I've gotten is that my book doesn't offer up a sound solution. And in part because of my comrade Renee, Saturdays with Renee on Black Liberation Media, please check that out. I've come to look at it a bit differently and to be a little bit more aggressive in my response to say that no, the book offers a solution. It offers a solution that focuses on political power and redistribution of the wealth we have already helped create. And my point would be that if we approach all claims, new or old, around the economy and technology with that fundamental basis intact, that foundation intact, we would see that whether it's AI, cryptocurrency, regular investment, the economy, as it normally operates, however people, experience it, that the point would be that we don't need, in other words, that Black people are not poor. The inequality that Black people and others suffer has nothing to do with a lack of access to a certain technology or a lack of certain levels of training or a lack of certain levels of financial literacy. Again, shout out to the newly minted Dr. Erica Brown and her work that's going to be coming out more and more, hopefully as soon as possible, to really do more for the myth around financial literacy than I've been able to do with the myth around buying power. But it's the same argument in the sense that financial literacy is offered as a colonial counterinsurgent weapon to convince Black people and others that you're poor because you don't know how to operate and save money and you're financially illiterate and immature and all these other, it's all nonsense. So my point would be to your question, Todd, is that the claims around AI are often eerily similar to all the other claims, again, around cryptocurrency, around Black capitalism, Black entrepreneurialism, et cetera, and so forth, with this promise that if you get in now and get in at the ground floor and get in a certain level of training, you will be able to take advantage of this, what we should understand as a bubble of this, what they are calling this new technological moment. And all of it is being done, again, to attack that claim that I'm making in my work, that we should be focused on the outcomes as a starting point, as a bare minimum. What is the wealth being created in this society? We have all already contributed to it. So if the GDP is 23 trillion, if that 1% are worth 54 trillion, as Forbes recently reported, that's the wealth we should be targeting for redistribution before we have any kind of conversation about what's our own shortcoming in terms of financial literacy or anything else. We've already produced that wealth. So that would be as short an answer as I think I could give in terms of this claim around AI, that where's the redistribution in it? Before I even started, same thing with crypto. Before I, yes, I might struggle with some of the specifics of the technology and the coding and the whatever, but I just keep looking, where's that distribution coming from? If you're telling me all this wealth is going to get created as my president of our university recently promised that the Mackenzie Scott money that's being used to develop Morgan State's new Obsidian AI is going to make my job somehow better and easier, I'm not interested in that. Where's the redistribution? That of the 15 billion that they say Morgan State is worth to the Maryland economy every year. Where's the redistribution in that? Don't tell me about an AI promise or something like that. So that's at least how I'm looking at it and trying to stay focused, keep my eye on the prize, as they say. Where's the redistribution at? So yeah, that's that. That's it. That's what I got, Todd. What you think?
I think you've been a voice in the wilderness for a long time on this, and I appreciate it because you really have not made a lot of friends with either edition of this book, and I appreciate that you remain bold and strong in this argument, because it's so easy to believe in the fairy tale of capitalism because they make it so appealing, and I'm glad that you're
Wait, but you know what though? As you're saying that, I'm looking at the
sure.
chat, and Moth 473 has a really good critique. Dr. Ball, I've read your second edition twice and have the book right in front of me now. Looking in the index, you have Black capitalism on 16 pages, but you don't define Black capitalism. What is your definition? I think that's a legit criticism. I don't think I did enough to define exactly what I mean by Black capitalism in the book. So in the forthcoming book chapter that I have on Black capitalism as narrative, I do try to talk a little bit about more what I mean by it. But the argument in short has been Black people engaging in capitalism. And I think that was why unconsciously I didn't do enough to address that critique in the book. I think unconsciously I just took for granted that people would understand what I'm saying. And that was a mistake. And I should have been more, and would like to be going forward, more aggressive in being clear on defining Black capitalism specifically as a counterinsurgent psychological warfare weapon, having nothing to do with anything material or in terms of having nothing to do in terms of the reality of the Black lived material experience. It is not meant to be anything real in terms of capitalism as an economy or the free market or any of that. It's meant to just be to work narratively under the claim that if Black people engage this economy as small business people, as investors, as financially literate actors, that capitalism will not be a problem, that capitalism will be all that it has been for the ruling elite. So in that forthcoming chapter, I do talk a little bit more about it and its narrative origins, and refer more to the work of a number of people who have been talking about this critically over the years, and largely whose work has been ignored or marginalized. So anyway, to the question and the comment, and anyone else in here, I hope that with that critique, I hope that addresses it. But I think it's a sound critique, and I appreciate it. Yeah, 1 and 2. Do we have the yeah? Thank you. I think you got to push. Yeah, turn the. I hear you, but I don't think the mic is up. But okay. Okay, go ahead. There you go. All right. And I appreciate that.
Where's the redistribution?
Mm-hmm.
I think that something should be done.
Yes.
Activity, scholarship, study, organizing, policy development, implementation of that. And so, going forward, and maybe in some of the discussions and things that you do, again, go forward, more of that can be, explored. So what do we do? Because we have to do something. We have to either work, we have to do something. And we can do, we have situations where people are in control to some degree of a great deal.
So I don't know if I agree with that. Mm-hmm.
Is run hard.
Mm-hmm.
Schools, he spent $4 million with the consultants to find out what was going on in Philadelphia.
And then how much did they spend on the school? $4 million went to a consultant. How much actually went to the? Wow.
Raise some objections and some issues. They had all kinds of.
So, but that's sort of.
So what I'm we have to do some things.
Mhm.
You know, so what does that look like? Yeah, I think we've got to spend a lot more time on what are alternative things for us to do collectively that will move our, you know, move our
So-
collective self.
So first of all, absolutely. So first of all, let me just reiterate a point that often it gets misunderstood. I am absolutely for all forms of collectivity. So if it's, so I have no problem with people if they want to do any kind of all the litany of community-based things that have been advocated over the years in terms of pooling resources, supporting Black businesses. I'm all of that. What I am saying though is that that's not going to be sufficient. So part of what I'm trying to argue is that even to your point about Black people being in control of all this, of good amounts of money, and then you use the example of the Philadelphia school system. This is sort of my point, whether it's that example or more broadly in terms of what is said that Black people spend in the economy. The numbers may sound large, but these are numbers that are reflective of what Black people are allowed to spend and on what they're allowed to spend. So it is not this infinite, or this, it isn't this pool of money that Black people can use collectively however they would choose. So if you are a Black superintendent, you have a school budget, but you can only use it for X, Y, and Z. If you have an income as an individual, there's only certain things you have access to actually purchase. If you even communities, small communities, there are enormous limitations on what pools of resources can be used in what way and to what, and with what expected returns. So the energy that I'm encouraging is more focused on political organization and an assumption of political power that addresses itself to those outcomes. That would start with, just as I said, using the Morgan State example, if Morgan State University is supposed to be worth $15 billion to the Maryland economy, where is the redistribution of that? Where does that 15 billion end up? And why isn't it being put back into the community in ways that change those communities? I'm saying in the current political arrangement, it cannot be used any differently than it is being used. And that's sort of my point. We would need new political formations and movements that would put new demands on whoever is elected to be in what position, or who are really, I'm saying, focused on where is that final pool of wealth ending up as a starter, as a baseline starter, to simply say, if 1% is worth 54 trillion, if this country produces 23 trillion, start with that. X amount of dollars to fix any amount of these problems, and then we can come back and have conversations about what a superintendent can do, or what an individual can do, or that's the starting. I want us to think at that level first and stop starting in the other direction with this nonsense about I need to change, he needs to change, she needs to change, and then we'll all individually be out here with our individual man in the mirror change, and then no, we let's anyway, go ahead. Yeah, jump in.
So if you just brought this up, right? First of all, shout out to y'all for coming through. How many folks actually read the book or plan to get the book? Round of applause, please. Thank y'all very much. Okay, cool. So that one solution for redistribution is clear, right? And I think some groups have actually followed your words, and they've taken you like face value, and they have redistributed the wealth. And we're literally watching it now with folks who are in political power. The 1% has redistributed our wealth back to themselves. They've kept their money. They figured out who has working power. They took those folks out of job. They took that money, got into our taxes, took that money. Like everywhere we look, our wealth has been redistributed. So what political power would it take to take back that level of government problem? What would we need to do? You have organization. I think that question, it stands in the sense of who needs to be removed from their position, whether standing or reading. What needs to happen in that possibility? What governmental changes need to occur? Where do you enter on?
I think we had a question here or comment. No. You could ask whatever, we can always come back. And is that mic working though? Is the green light on? Hey. Right.
Where the market competition for everything from shea butter to clothing, the state's capital, right? So landscaping, construction, right? All of that means that I see what you did, right? And it's not gonna grow us. I wonder if you look at two specific examples. The first is Western Air out of the Bahamas, right? And the way in which just the opportunity to fly across the Caribbean by itself. They have like one route to Miami, Fort Lauderdale, I think. But by and large part, just the first time navigation, the ease of navigation across the Caribbean may actually get a little bit closer to what you said about just political formation and, radical networking. And the second is a lot more in the first vein of what I've discussed. But admittedly, I think trying to do something to challenge our dependency upon mining inside of Africa, outside of Africa. And that's Continental automobile.
No. So I appreciate your questions, but no, I haven't. So I've been promising. Well, I haven't promised, but I've been suggesting for a long time now that future work could easily map my argument about Black America here onto other parts of the diaspora. And every time I do peek at other communities of African people in the UK, Caribbean, the relationship is basically the same, and the arguments are often very much the same. So I don't know enough about the specifics there. Although, again, what I'm hearing though in your questions, it sounds like it's that starting from potential innovation with travel and communication. And again, I'm advocating that we think differently and go into and look at what wealth is being created by the new airline or the new travel routes or the new technology or the new mining. And where is that being redistributed? And then because again, my argument, what I'm thinking is that if that remains the focus, then we're less likely to be tricked by various narrative claims, and we're less likely to be neo-colonially taken advantage of by someone who looks more or less like us, sounds more or less like us, but is signing away the resources and the wealth to create a bourgeoisie for themselves. So that's why yeah. But no, I haven't looked specifically at those examples, and I would like to at some point. And again, as big shout out to the people. No, I appreciate that, and big shout out to the people in the room. Some of my favorites are just now walking in as well, and we've packed the room. So thank you all very much. Thanks to everybody who's online watching as well. And I think we have another comment, question, query, conundrum, catechism. Medea, I talk about you all the time, and I don't know if you've ever heard this joke. Like 5, 6, maybe 8 years ago.
Can you just clarify that you're not talking about Tyler Perry?
Oh no, I'm talking about. Oh right, I'm sorry, Medea Benjamin, the world famous activist. I've made the joke repeatedly that years ago, you were riding your bike near WPFW, and I was getting out of my car. And because you weren't looking and I wasn't looking, I almost took you out. So I just, I always like to take credit for the fact that I avoided you and I saved your life and allowed your work to continue. Yeah, you're welcome. Anytime. Who had yes?
I'm wondering if you included the gospel
Mm.
in your upcoming book, and because I feel like that's a deepening of the mindset. That's, we're just around the corner from being rich or accessing this wealth.
We are.
Your, your things.
No, and I should. I would like to. There's obviously there's plenty of time for me to do more work than I'm likely to do. But what I would want to say though, if I did, so the myth of propaganda, black buying power owes a lot to, for instance, George Jackson, who was the only big name that I'm aware of who was always right from the beginning on this concept of purchasing power and what it did and did not mean. But because of what was the books that were found in his cell after he was assassinated, one of them being Earl O'Farrell's The Myth of Black Capitalism, that book had a lot to do with my own work, including his new edition that came out in 2023, his updated edition, which reaffirms some of the same arguments about the shortcomings of Black capitalism. But my point is, if I were to do what you suggest, it would start with the foundation, probably with James Foreman's Black Manifesto, where he put a call out to the churches and to the religious organizations for, I don't remember him saying something specific to prosperity gospel, but saying you all have a lot of money passing through your institutions that need to be revolutionarily redistributed. The problem I have goes back to the comment that Brother Bell made a minute ago. If there isn't an already existing radical movement that will propel the people in the pews to make demands of their institutions, then the limitations on what even a radical preacher could do with the church collection are still going to be there. Whether the people are saying, you know, if you're not going to use this to buy yourself a jet, I don't want to give you any money. No, in other words, I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, were some of these prosperity gospel folks to turn around and start saying, I'm raising this money so we can have some sort of socialist redistribution, they might have a rebellion from within their own pews, I feel like. So that's why I'm saying there needs to be, we need to advocate something broader so it's not left to the individual institution of the church. We need political movements that encourage redistribution so that they would then turn their attention to the church community and say, instead of the prosperity gospel, redistribution. But yeah, I don't know, but that would be how I would at least think of myself starting that project. Yeah.
My question has to do with just that, kind of how we educate our community. What goes a long way in trying to do that, but also your book is for, it seems to me, an intellectual class. I'd like to know what your thoughts are about educating the masses to what capitalism is. You know, just what that is in real basics, what alternatives are. You know, instead of this boogeyman of communism and socialism, that people don't understand those as well. So I'd like to hear your thoughts about how we educate common people about what redistribution of wealth actually means in this U.S. capitalist society.
So one of the self-criticisms I have of the buying power book is that I thought that's what I was doing. I had it in my mind that I'm softening the ideology, the political argument, trying to stay focused on the particular function of this one myth, and that in so doing it would reveal. And I was wrong. I think I was mistaken, and that I should have been more overt and more aggressive, both with my politics and then maybe better in my focus writing to that particular question that you raised. But all I can say is that in my head, I thought that's what I was attempting to do. That I wanted to lay out what I thought was a relatively easily consumable argument around why these claims continue to pop up, and that this is what we needed to be pointed towards. But I think I just need to be more clear and more direct. And should I ever write again, I won't make that particular mistake. Yeah.
Assumptions about where the populace was.
Maybe. Maybe.
We got a question.
Sure, sure.
For making it from the tree line street. Great to see you in person. I really appreciate the work you're doing with Sadiq on Asian.
Yeah.
Like, the next one needs to be like Latino and two likes, whatever the nomenclature is. That's the next one. I'm just giving to you to work on.
Thanks.
We don't got none of this.
No, I don't.
So, my question is kind of going back to education and maybe similar to the sister's point about people's understanding where we are, because I'm in DC and I'm in education advocacy space. And so some of it, we're working for better education results in DC, but also like, we're pushing these kids to a system that doesn't care. The system is going to do what the system does. And so to reverse it and say, I appreciate what you're saying, like, let's focus on the redistribution. But like, as parents, like, we're trying to get our kids through these stupid standardized testing and like what middle school and lotteries, and for people in the DC space, like lotteries and this, that. And so I'm thinking about kind of maybe like key highlights that we could do, like folks in the education space, to turn people's heads around. Like, yes, we want the best for our kids, but we need to think about
Which is all.
kids can do all the things, and we're still going to be whatever new stats are going to be in 2026, 2027.
So, yeah. Of course.
So I just want to circle back to something, right?
Mhm.
Because I think the comment about who is this book written for it's always a great point, right? And at the same time, it's the point when you get one of these academic textbooks, it would need a workbook companion for people who are doing work in the streets.
That's
Right.
real. That's real.
But I mix what I like is the video workbook companion, where I think Dr. Ball goes to war and tries to take out, I'm not going to use Dr. Porter's words, but tries to take out each one of the comers and bringers of the myth of Black buying power, right? And so you almost hear live discussion with, oh, insert people said Black buying power 1 something trillion, right? So insert the names, who are the names? Like Boyce Watkins, right? If we could just harness this, we could get that name, right? Or like Earn Your Leisure, right? So you could just go down the road and see every time it comes up. For myself, I'm a psychologist. I work with folks who are returning really revolving citizens in workforce development spaces. They're always promising folks that you won't get jobs if you just learn how to be a good employee, right? But then we need places that are going to give you jobs. So the political piece is there, right? So when I bring this information to them, it lands immediately, but it has to be given to them in the way that they understand. So the idea of redistribution is just everybody eats. Like, that's our job as the workers in the streets, to take this information and walk that out with the workbook, with the video workbook, with the video essay that we have nearly 5 a day. I don't understand how this man posts so much. He's online more than he is in person. I'm shocked he's here. He's probably online now.
No, just quickly before I forget, that's real. That because I meant to add this to a previous response. I think it works for several of them. There is, I think, a really good book that I've been talking about, but just not enough, and we should all revisit in terms of trying to bridge some of these gaps between where we are and where we could be. And I do think that the Socialist Reconstruction book from Party for Socialism and Liberation does a great job of very simply laying things out. This is what capitalism is. This is what socialism is. And this is what it would look like if we took the world as it is right now and just had different approaches in terms of public policy and outcomes. So I just wanted to put that out there. I think it's a great, it's a great intermediary socialist reconstruction. And they just go through, housing, education, military, health, the ecology, and just show how with, and then the flip side is that with the current administration just wilding out, they are showing paradoxically, what someone else with a different political trajectory could do were they elected to office. You know, all the stuff from renaming the Gulf of America and the Department of War and all this other kind of nonsense. Socialist Reconstruction basically says rename these departments, refashion these departments and these already existing offices, and have them be designed to redistribute and solve the problems of healthcare and housing instead of causing all the problems. And it sounds fanciful, but it is, the book does a good job of laying out the steps that could be taken if we have that sort of political trajectory refashioned for us. And that's something I definitely want to advocate, again, as a very bottom baseline, like the very initial. I'm not even describing that as revolution. I just think it's a baseline of where humanity should be going, starting point. So yeah, there was a, oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I speak as maybe most of the time, North Asian who has been following your and ordained right here in this city. I won't name the church. And I'm not going to but and particularly since I've moved on to serve others, just remain that was as children 20 years ago. But also a Howard mom. So for me, the question is about this bifurcation, and particularly the church. And so my question would be, and I've heard you ask this before, I wish there were paraphrasing on one of your video episodes. I wish there were a church that kind of had the spirit, and so like I would go to that church. So I want to give you some names.
Okay. Okay.
That, because what I hear, and I've been working trying to find a place and working to bridge the gap between a what I would call a despiritualized left or jaded left, if anything, that does not believe that there's anything to do with spirituality that's progressive and liberative. And then obviously what many of us might identify with the left see as the prevailing Christianity, colonized Christianity, and so forth. So first of all, I'm an example of one, right? I did my master's under James Cone, theology, and Dolores Williams, women's theology, and we're a minority. So what I want to point you to, Pink and everyone, now obviously you can take it or leave it, but people who are engaging with a critique of capitalism, a critique of patriarchy, a critique of domination, right? It's online. One is Pink Robe Chronicles. Her name is Dr. Melvia Sampson. She's a professor at Wake Forest. But she's, those of us who are doing this work of liberation from a spiritual space, she's one. I recommend Pink Robe Chronicles. The other is First African Church down in Lithonia, Georgia. He just retired. Gets down on the get down. All the people, him and there's a brother there who's a minister. The pastor who founded it has just retired, older brother. But someone else there. But you can go there, and they have all kinds of a whole archive of information critiquing capitalism, critiquing colorism, critiquing intra-communal classes, all of that. So I'm going to leave those two as examples. But the one I want to end on and raise the question is Dr. King himself. And that whole legacy, though it was co-opted, the civil rights movement, particularly the foot soldiers, Ella Baker and Fannie Taylor. So I want to kind of lift that up, but we're critiquing the church to not lift up just the prosperity paths, right?
No, absolutely. And again, since you said it, if there's a Nat Turner church, sign me up for that too. So and for that matter, because I've been looking at him lately, John Brown, like, yeah, let's wrap. Let's wrap. Now, to be clear, and I appreciate your suggestions, but just to be clear for those who may be unaware, my argument initially was not that we find more radical progressive churches, not that I'm disagreeing with what you're saying. My argument was that those of us who claim atheism or materialism or left politics, that we find a way to incorporate some of the aspects of that vibe that when I went with my family a few months ago to my buddy's church, I and it was not radical, it was not political, it was just a straight regular Black Sunday church. and I felt great for like a week. Like I loved it. I loved the whole thing from the moment we walked in and the elders are greeting and helping you to your seat to the little jokes and the whole and all. So really what I was suggesting was that, again, we in other spaces that we try to maybe incorporate some of that and take some time to build with one another. And you know, I was, you know, extending the joke a little bit and you know, we have some people in our collectives that have the gift of gab and, you know, have them give a sermon. We got musicians. I would love to hear some radical gospel, you know, like all of that. So that was really my point. Though I definitely appreciate your suggestions, and will absolutely follow up. And yeah. So and I hear your point. And this is something that I disagree with some of my you know, former co-hosts here and there on these related topics. That I do think if our goal is political organization, whatever our beliefs are or lack thereof, we need to find ways to build. Sure, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Just in terms of building, this would be my ask. And I've been working on this for decades now and listening to all the, not all, but as many as I could. I call them black spaces. So the streets, the bourgeoisie, you know, Martha's Vineyard, I'm Howard, right? All those things, but all that exists in Howard. That's one of the things, at least when I went there, right? Hip hop, the evangelical, the doily, the whatever it is, right? All of it.
Yep.
And I would say to gather, and it's my challenge, who do I need to become in order to reach as many as I can? And so in doing that work, I try not to alienate. And I think what I hear a lot, not necessarily from you individually, but a lot of what I hear in this space is that kind of critique. And I think I don't know that it's helpful if our goal, in the words of someone,
I got you.
I think and I hear it a lot. And that's, again, I'm good with it. It's not gonna change me. It's not gonna offend me. I can work with it. I'm from New York. I can rock with a lot. And I preach with that, right? So I'm good. But in terms of reaching people, I'm asking, can we bring a different critique of spirituality? Because it's not just Christianity. We could bring it, I mean, NOI is very conservative, right? That's very conservative. It's not.
I'm not saying a word. I'm listening to you. And you're not gonna get me. You're not gonna get me to sit up here. We're not.
all religions, Robert John Henry Clark said, religions are
handmaidens of conquerors and patriarchal murder cults. Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
That was Robert Clark. So I'm not trying to, but all of them. So all religions have the capacity.
Yeah.
all religions have. Let me quickly. All religions have the capacity. Hinduism, Islam, Rasta, whatever. All religions have the capacity. All religions have the capacity, and I stand on that. All religions have the capacity because they're made with people, so they all have the capacity to have divinity and depravity.
Absolutely, all capacity to the people. Absolutely.
I start with mine, including Christianity. So with that said, can we move to a place? This is my closing question. Can you acknowledge that? Can you acknowledge that? And then from there, is there something redemptive that can be used to bring people who are people of faith in?
Yeah.
Trying to evangelize.
No, and again, that's in general, that's been my approach. I'm happy to admit my position on the topic, but not I don't mean to do it in a way that would inhibit us building. And again, Dr. Clark's words notwithstanding, I'm down with anybody who uses whatever forms of identity that they have that leads them to their radical traditions. Every identity, religious, every group that we would attach ourselves to has a revolutionary tradition. So I'm more interested in encouraging people find that and move in those directions. So
Can I go back now?
please.
Okay, so this idea.
Oh, I did forget. My bad. My bad. My bad. Because I saw somebody in the chat, making fun of me not wanting smoke for Farrakhan, and that's true. That's true.
There's levels to this.
There's levels. But I will say that I have been critical of Minister Farrakhan for promoting at times the buying power mythology. And he has done over the years, made the mistake of falling into those financial literacy traps and those claims that if we do this, that, and the third, we can do this, that, and the third. And I have encouraged that he be, updated on some of those analyses. Because that has been one of the issues that I've run into across the Black political spectrum. The mythology has found a home. So we do need to find ways of addressing all of the spaces in our communities around these issues. And my bad, please go ahead.
I was just gonna say that people chatting, some of them are in the room. Like
They probably are.
People online might want to. Okay. So the point I wanted to bring back was the Black capitalism point. And I think you do define it. And you give it a policy, and you give it a place, and you give it time. And it was Nixon's Black capitalism. And you talk about Nixon's version of Black capitalism as the definition that every subsequent group keeps trying to apply.
So I did it then. So
then you did it.
that past criticism.
What Nixon said.
So that past criticism was wrong.
It just wasn't complete.
Do you all apologize? No, I'm just playing. My beautiful Black sister. Do you apologize? No, actually, I'm glad you raised. So yeah, I agree. I agree with myself. I was right. No, I do. But look, the critique notwithstanding, or standing, I do think I could have done more to lay it out and make it plain. But I also accept your addendum that Nixon explained Black capitalism as his solution to keep people away from Black power being defined as radical socialism, revolutionary nationalism, Pan-Africanism, socialism, et cetera, all the variations of Black radicalism that we're not meant to aspire to. So, yeah, I did talk a little bit about that, and a little bit in the context of some of the psychological warfare and the mythologies that were promoted more broadly to create the buying power subset. So, yeah, but all right.
Identified that Nixon had a program and he never funds.
Yes.
So the point there is.
And tell us really why that's important, though.
My father, dog, golden figure, right? So I have to
Big up, boop, 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 boop.
Because our fathers were somehow in war at the same time, but not knowing each other, right?
I do think that's dope that our fathers are both written about in the same book, even though they didn't necessarily know each other, that we're aware of. That is dope.
I'm gonna sit over here like I'm trying to be up for Black People Week. But no, so if you think about this is intellectual work we do. That's that call is the same fight our ancestors fight, is the same fight that we fight. And we're preparing the world for, in the traditions of everybody, 7 generations. And we got at least 1 generation with it, right? And when we have children, we're thinking about the world in a different way. Like, we want next generations to know that when this slogan comes up, Black buying power, it is automatically to be shot down. Excuse me. But like, for real, we should know that for multiple generations. That as soon as somebody comes to the conflict, no, go read Dr. Ball's book. Stop talking about it. Let's get to the next one, right? And everything associated with that brings us to that same point. So we can get to what? What is the revolution? What is that revolution?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking. Because you said that on page 98. Who got the book with him?
The only so all jokes aside, you are right that part of what I have hoped would happen is that this book would help clear some of the intellectual brush that would clarify what next steps should be taken. But what those steps are, I did not identify in that with that level of clarity. And then I often just tell people, if you really want to know what I think, George Jackson's Blood in My Eye pretty much solves all of that. But I didn't write that book. And as I admitted, I was intentionally trying to avoid some of the more overt politics just to get folks to address themselves to this one particular claim, with the idea being that if I was more politically out of the closet per se, that the response would be focused on his claims around revolutionary nationalism, socialism, Pan-Africanism, and his critiques of colonialism. I don't want and therefore the buying power argument is to be ignored. And I was trying to avoid that, and I think maybe went a little bit too far and imbalanced it a little bit too much in that other direction. But to your point, and I appreciate you making it, that's one of the reasons why I've been loving this relatively new YouTube arc and engaging in as many spaces like this as possible to try to flesh out some of the arguments that weren't made in the book itself. So, yeah. Yes.
Hi, Dr. Ball. I was just wondering if you had, because you mentioned this current administration sort of, I hope in the death throes of like empire, lashing out on the third world and with the sort of imminent collapse of the petrodollar.
Yeah.
And the cratering economy that's based on oil extraction and the rise of China and its renewable revolution, and the rise of the AES and resisting French imperialism. I was just wondering what the path forward you see for Pan-Africanism in Africa is.
Oh man, the pathway to Pan-Africanism. So I don't really have a good answer to that, other than that it should remain a goal with the particular definition that I appreciate from the All African People's Revolutionary Party and Kwame Ture, United States of Africa under scientific socialism. When I mentioned earlier that a lot of the arguments I make in this book have parallels in the diaspora, I do think one of the many, and there are many, inhibitors to the Pan-Africanism that I would desire are the parallel mythologies that still exist in African populations that are imposed by design and of necessity, that lead to these similar kinds of critiques and refusals to engage in those radical histories. So before we even get to the political assassinations and the overthrows of governments and all the other machinations of the West, these mythologies play a big role. And when I engage, the diaspora to the extent that I do, the response is often the same, that radical activists and organizers are trying to find ways to work around these mythologies, and too many people in the community and in societies throughout the continent and the diaspora believe in these variations of Black capitalist solutions to the problems, and private investment and private business ownership. And Dr. Bolden mentioned earlier, Earn Your Leisure, these popular conservative Black media outlets, they're going to the continent and they're rebranding Pan-Africanism as Black capitalism, as commercial investment. And so on some small level, that's what I'm trying to advocate with my work, that more and more people engage these critiques in the way that we're discussing them here and be less susceptible to those mythologies, and then build and movements around them, around those critiques. But yeah, it's a really insufficient answer. I admittedly don't have a better answer. I see some people in the room who might, though. I'm gonna call out Netfa here in a second. There are people in the room who would have, I think, a more substantive answer, and I invite them, Netfa, to grab a mic and say something about it. But or anyone else in the room, because but that's what I do see. I see a tremendous, and if we look at the media, I mean, if we look even at what this sister is doing, and she's from, I forgot her name, but she has a diaspora name, but she's doing this Onyx Impact, and it's this Black well, it's defined as liberal, but it's really a Black conservative-led media analysis outlet that is meant to drive Black audiences to the Democratic Party and back to capitalism as a solution. And I see variations of that having an impact throughout the diaspora. And again, so that's why I would like to think that the challenges that I and others are offering to these narratives could help resist that. But yeah, man, please,
So,
please.
Floyd, your MC that starts the book with Jay-Z, right? And we couldn't stop the Fat Boys from breaking up.
Every day I wake up.
We couldn't stop the Fugees from breaking up. When it came to Sudan and South Sudan, we couldn't stop them from breaking up. Like the British template for bifurcation of countries is strong. They figured out how to stop them, right? When South Sudan began its country, like 2011, it was on a panel, and the private sector was already the language. What we need is the private sector to come in and help our government get established. Like before the government existed, they already had that need, right? So I think if you could think about what's happening in Burkina Faso, like, is there something there in terms of nationalizing the extractive industries, nationalizing the land, or nationalizing everything, right? So if you just say, like, there are national parks, which means you nationalize the land, protected some sector of the environment. How does that work for solving the issues of Pan-Africanism without the unity? How do we employ these strategies? What Nkrumah was trying to say, that if there is one country that isn't on the side of our folks, they immediately become the vulnerable spot for every country around. How do we address that problem?
I put that out to the room too. Yeah.
When we meet at Martha's Vineyard, how do we address that problem? Where do you, sir? Or how would Martha, you said that? Oh, no. They put you at the table, but they don't. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I don't have a go ahead. I don't have a go ahead. I and Todd left. I was going to pitch it to him. Yeah, go ahead. But yeah, I really don't have a good answer to that. I don't know. Admittedly, the first thing that popped into my head as you were saying that is that we have this horrible reverse hashtag problem that is itself playing a role of carrying the water of white conservative nationalism into Black spaces. You have, Tucker Carlson talking about being in DC and lamenting the divide between Ethiopians and Black people. I mean, seriously, what are we supposed to do with that? Like, what are we supposed to do with that? Like the levels of insanity that are involved in that. So I really don't know how we other than I do think, going back to my self-critique about how I approach this book, I think we need to be more aggressive. I just think we have to be more aggressive, and whatever risks come with that or are attached to that, we just have to assume them. Our arguments have to be more aggressive. Our organization has to be more aggressive, and our advocacy, all of it has to be ramped up. I do really like what Dhoruba said when Trump got elected the first time. Dhoruba bin Wahad said, "Don't get scared, get organized." And that's it's a fallback, but I don't know what else to say. I'm very happy to hear others in the room comment on this if they'd like. Oh, yes, please.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts about how we can better utilize cultural avenues to inform the political and economic. And I guess what made me think this is that Jay-Z and him being like the poster boy for Black capitalism. And I think even people nowadays in our community understanding that materially capitalism is a no-go, but there's a cultural pull factor for like Jay-Z or other folks culturally. So what are some ways you could like?
Yeah, did you see Dave Chappelle's NPR interview with Michelle Martin? There is a huge, I mentioned it earlier, there is a moment, and I know others are talking about this too. We're in a moment of the black bourgeoisie apologia. the apologetics for the Black capitalist community. You know, this is there. You know, and Chappelle. I mean, just the Chappelle interview was disturbing on so many different levels, especially given his importance to me personally was upon a time as a cultural figure. But this is where I keep going back to, you know, you can't be rich, famous, and radical at the same time. We have to understand the context of that. We have to understand that the more I read Gabriel Rockhill's new book, Critiquing Western Marxism, and the Frankfurt School that moved me so much in college, showing their shortcomings. I mean, we have to, but we do have to have an appreciation for the cultural industries and how they work, the political economy and how they function. So I'll just say it's a matter of some kind of self-promotion. Some comrades of mine and I are engaging in a new project we're calling tentatively the Ma'afa Nakba From Ground Zero film project. And we're basing it on the Palestinian-made film From Ground Zero, which is comprised of 8-minute short movies that they stitched together into a 90-minute film. And we're advocating that people use that methodology, and by December of this year, submit on a website we'll be promoting shortly, their 8-minute movies. With the only requirements being that they have to be shot on the cell phone, they have to be original footage, and it's due by December 31st, I think. With the idea being, following our comrade Mtume Gant's point about third cinema, that we have to be producing an alternative media content, and we have to be training ourselves to be audiences for that media content. And then that media work has to be attached to political movement. And I don't think we can expect it to have the level of popularity that most of us want with our work. We have to do that work targeting specific segments of the population, encouraging them to move in certain directions that would then have a greater impact. Yeah, so other than advocating that form of that kind of understanding in terms of interpreting media and producing it, I don't know. But all that is popular is fraudulent, though, in the context of settler colonial media and constructs. So just be vigilant. You know, how do you know what you know, and why do you like what you like? I keep advocating that. You know. Anyway, I hope there's somewhere an answer in there. Yeah.
We're going to bring NEFA into our conversation.
Yes, finally, NEFA.
As you hoped.
Yes.
So, yeah, this is NEFA bringing everybody up.
Shout out to NEFA.
Voices with Vision, WPFW, Pan African Community Action. Or anything.
I think you broke some ground there. Something we definitely need to have the lenses that or the veil put off of that, the whackness of Black mind power and whatnot. I just think everybody needs to read this, needs to understand it. So it was groundbreaking work, brother.
Thank you.
Pan-Africanism, you know, and this is, so we're in, I think when I concur with what you said, with the answer you gave of it being able to look at as an objective that Kwame Nkrumah and Kwame Ture and whatnot is an objective, the total unification and liberation of Africa, uniting up Africa as one state under a scientific socialist government. That's the end result. But I think the question, and most questions beg, how do we get from here to there? And I think, I'm going to have to try to make it short, because you also brought up AES and there's other. The Alliance of Sahel States, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. But then there's also movements on the African continent, a lot of young people, a lot of them be referred to as Gen Z, that are also standing up against neoliberal policies. They have comprador, neocolonial governments, and they're standing up. There's not a lot of clarity there, I'll be honest, as far as I can tell. There's some disclarity in that. So they're kind of standing up to symptoms without being able to assert what we said is the objective. But I think it still says something. The fact that the AES exists, and the fact that we also, outside of Africa, can lend itself to, can boost that credibility of that goal, and to insert into these movements the clarity, the political clarity that must be the goal. I think work like your book, work that actually exposes capitalism as being the enemy of our people, enemy of our unity, the enemy of humanity, kind of helps to that. So I think in order to get from here to the United States of Africa, we have to start having projects and programs that are Pan-African, revolutionary Pan-Africanist in scope, that seek to build concrete relationships with our people around the world, wherever they are, particularly on the continent of Africa. So, fortify and buttress this notion that anything that's not socialism is going to be an impediment to our unity and to our liberation. So we have to play that role. I think the existence of the AES and even these other movements that may need to burn and cook burn are better suited to understand anti-capitalism. While it might not be clear, it's sort of like we just want the dictator going, and we're going, it's a system. It's neocolonialism. You get rid of one dictator, they're just gonna put in the next one. So, but we're in a good footing to be able to kind of pass on that kind of clarity. And I think we should do that. The existence of the AES does that, and the fact that these movements against what's called the crisis of capitalism, the crisis of imperialism, makes it prime, makes it right for us to be able to disseminate this consciousness.
Right on. Thank you very much. Who's next? Is there somebody else? Yep. Sure. And thanks again, everybody who's here and online. Appreciate you all again coming out. Yes.
Peace, Dr. Ball. So
Peace.
my question is really quick. As somebody where it took about 3 months of me watching the content of Black Liberation to figure out what the first hashtag, the meaning of that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
What the first hashtag is.
No, I appreciate that. So the reference to the reverse hashtag is a reference to the both the ADOS hashtag, American Descendants of Slavery, and then the FBA hashtag, Foundational Black Americans. And by reverse, I mean that a certain 00 African homeboy of mine came up with this, so I can't take credit for it. But the reverse is, of course, ADOS is backwards. It should be SODA, Solidarity of Diaspora or Dispersed Africans. But those movements themselves connected to very white right-wing politics are, I think, playing more of a negative role than some of us would like to imagine. Even where young people may not be aware that they're getting their negative analysis and ideas from these spaces as they trickle down through various other media. And I've even come across some very popular and otherwise at least liberal, democratic, Black content creators who have at one or another time made reference in some positive way to FBA or to ADOS. And I don't think realizing the conservative and anti-African and anti-solidarist politics that are embedded in those hashtags, even as at the base of them, they are meaning to point to something very real, that Black America has a very particular history and a very particular set of problems and forms of abuse that do need to be addressed. So, but the solutions never are going to come by siding solely with this state as an answer to the problem. So that's why we need what Netfa was talking about and other variations represented in this room. So yeah, thank you for the question though. Yes. Yes, you.
I'm generally of the opinion I think liberals tend to be worse than conservatives. And I'm curious, but I find myself amongst neoliberals and liberals with frequency. And they do tend to get some things right. I'm curious if you have any advice with not argumentation strategies, but kind of notes to hit or ways to actually open their minds to socialism and its aspects.
Yeah, I've struggled with that over the years. Please.
First rule is don't argue with bots.
Yeah.
Right.
In person, yeah.
Bots. Right?
Right. Okay. It's a real phenomenon. So I think in some cases it depends on your own temperament and your own style and who you're talking to. But in general, I just try to keep what I found to be an effective mechanism in the classroom and out, for instance, is to ask people, where are you getting your information? Or to ask them to define the terms they're using. I've found that to be incredibly effective. And then to try to point them back to my method is honestly is becoming more, with few exceptions, trying to avoid hostility. I've become more wanting to just get them to recognize how little they know. And if I can get them to reach that and be honest, like, where did you get that? Like, even with the buying power claim, where did you get it? A little bit of an investigation shows that all of it comes from almost the same one source. So, asking people, what have you read about socialism? Have you even read the Communist Manifesto while you're talking how bad it is? These very simple, basic, what have you read about capitalism has been a really effective question. What is convincing you that this is going to work? And very rarely do people have substantive answers for this. So, and then I try to, as I've said tonight, I try to point them back to what are the outcomes? Why are you asking me to start a business when there's $23 trillion created in the GDP last year? Like, why do I need to be a better businessman? Like, what do we, like, why? But at the end of the day, I have been frustrated. The propaganda I and many of us are critical of is effective, and that's why we're critical of it. And sometimes people will just look me dead in the face and say, I don't know, I don't care, I'm going for the bag. And it's like, well, I'll see you when I see you. But I really, and the last thing I think is very important, that the more we're doing all of this as part of organizations and as part of collectives, the better and easier it becomes. And that's another self-criticism that I'm offering here. So yeah, but I hope that helps. And then tell them to watch Black Liberation Media, of course. Change your media diet. Yes.
We are maybe 5 to 7 years post the kind of inundation of social networking, right? Where it's clear that you have one person in the center as an interlocutor for whatever their group of friends, followers are, right? And so therefore it makes it very easy for even laymen, right? People who haven't necessarily studied social networking analysis, but are participating on Facebook, Instagram, whatever, to look for causal arrows and direct them back to a central figure, right? But we also come from a long line of ancestors that have been murdered for exactly that reason, right? Find the person that has spoken on college campuses, spoken on a soapbox on 125th Street, spoken at a mosque, spoken at a church, right? Make sure that person that has deeply entrenched networks becomes the central figure, so that we can then form a camp that says we are following this person, and form another camp that says we are in disagreement with this person for X, Y, and Z, right? Admittedly, this is something to admit in DC. I recommended 2 students for that Howard JC scholarship, right? And it's because I have never met Jay-Z, but Robin Broughton Smith, his former accountant, is like my play cousin, right? My god sister, my little brother's my godmother, my little brother's godmother are her sisters, right? But I've seen so many directed attacks against Howard alum Robin Broughton Smith. I've seen so many directed attacks against me personally, and I'm not saying that that's what you're doing. A nice thing to not know is one sometimes. Against Jay-Z, that I know are just her second run in entrepreneurship, that is once again being curtailed and shadowed by the legendary entrepreneur, billionaire, capitalist. So how do we delimit ourselves from 2 things? Forming list formation against protest, because I had my own life threatened as a result of being one of those people on African Met Bodies list, right? And redirecting ourselves offline again and meeting in centralized spaces of Black thought as such that we're not giving ourselves over to the government.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean, the more we do offline and the more we do in person, I think the better, more likely we are to come up with the solutions that we need. I admit I'm not entirely sure I tracked everything you were saying in terms of if there was something specific around.
All of these networks, right, to how we distract. I can speak at Harvard, I can speak at tomorrow. I'm still gonna get invited to meetings and Ali, right? And as soon as you do that, I'm in the center of all these networks way before we have a social networking space to track it, right? And they become the target. So how do we disinvest enough in social
Yeah.
networking, but still follow practices on YouTube like their own?
Well, obviously follow me. I mean, I obviously, I mean, what are we talking about? Follow, obviously watch all of my YouTube all the time, every day, constantly, twice. No, but the real, again, I think it's already been said, the real solution is those offline, the thing that saved, well, it's difficult to use that word in this context, but the thing that protected Malcolm from falling off politically was his connection to his organizational work and the movement around him. So if I understood your point, whenever he got invited to this place or that place, he was grounded by that foundational organizational ideological work. That's what I think we all need. Personally, I've been most effective when the public work I'm doing is reflective of some offline collective movement work. To the extent that is decreasing, I think whatever good I'm doing publicly is undermined by that lack of engagement. So I think that is ultimately always the answer, that these events and books and YouTube is ultimately designed to get people into rooms where none of this is on, and we're committed to some sort of organizational work, and then we can come up with the answers that we need. But I would only say again that just because of his recent media spin cycle, Jay-Z and again Dave Chappelle and others are making the tour. They're making the rounds now to convince everybody that their position, their wealth is not only not to be criticized, but should be aspirational, and that all of us should be attempting to become the next Jay-Z, Dave Chappelle, etc. Which of course undermines all of all of our aspirations. So yeah. What else? Who else? Yes.
Yes, I was just thinking about boycotts. We know the Montgomery bus boycott works, and recently we had the Target boycott, some of the other boycotts against major retailers. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not. I don't agree. So one, I wouldn't compare the Target boycott to the Montgomery boycott, and then I would also suggest, in terms of its lack of organization and commitment and goals. Specifically, just off the top, the Montgomery bus boycott at least had as its goal the collective improvement of working people, of the Black community. The Target DEI nonsense is, as my comrade Renee exposed in her research, the DEI effort within Target has only ever benefited a 3% increase in Black executives. And over the time of Target's engagement with DEI, while they were operating with it, Black employment among the workers went down. So DEI and that Target boycott, unlike the Montgomery boycott, has its target the goals and aspirations of the Black bourgeoisie. And that's why there's all this confusion around who started it, who led it, who called it off. I also think people should ask their questions: why is this former Baltimore preacher Jamal Bryant now in Atlanta doing his same thing? And people should really investigate and look into why he's down there and not up here anymore. I would also then suggest that the boycott has been mythologized when it's targeted and discussed in Black spaces with Black communities. That the Montgomery boycott was successful because it was a year-long attack on one municipal bus system with a desired goal of integrating the buses. That was it. To extrapolate from that we can now boycott anything and get anything is part of the mythology that is meant to move us away from the kind of radical political organizing we really need to be focused on, with these claims of Julianne Malveaux, in the middle of her attack against me on an interview not too long ago, was saying, I advocate we boycott everything red, just to make a point. The point B, part of what I'm saying is the flaw in that is that if, for instance, you say you want to boycott Coca-Cola, now you're not talking about a one municipal bus system, you're talking about a global entity that would require massive amounts of solidarity and boycotting to have any meaningful impact. And then what are the goals? What was the goal of the DEI boycott? What was the goal? So in other words, if we're going to support boycotts, obviously it should be BDS and not supporting Israel. If we're going to support boycotts, we should be clear on what we want to boycott and with what impact and what goal. So if we wanted to say just locally, we're going to target, pun intended, one outlet and with one set of goals that could maybe be used as an example that other cities and other communities could emulate, with it being attached to, as Dr. King had been doing, that is often ignored, to some broader political project and some broader project of shutting things down, as opposed to let's just get a few more Black executives hired. Let's get a few more Black symbolic inclusion. Let's ignoring everything else. By the way, as Renee also pointed out, when we were talking about boycotting Target, they were actually, Al Sharpton and them were saying, go to Costco, which also has its own horrific labor issues. So it was like, that's the level of the lack of clarity I'm saying we were dealing with. There was no, anyway. So that's, ultimately, that's what I think. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, yeah.
It's a good question that you've spoken to in the text in reference to E. Franklin Frazier, who the governors of Black people are, right? And what the protest does to kind of expose them or certify them. And then how do we take away the power of those folks who insert names here, ancestral, Pop Mike Recent, would use their ability to gather Black folks with their power to say, I control these Negroes, right? So it's the myth of Black protest power. You see what I did with it? So now watch how he handles that piece, because this becomes the protest breaker of who the Negro gatekeepers are. And that, I think, is an unspoken advantage of like getting to that next part of the question. Thank you for that. So talk about Jesse Jackson.
So I knew this setup was coming. So, well, for instance, because I was working in Baltimore at the time, when the Freddie Gray killing happened and the city went into uprise, I happened to be around some of the activist organizers and some of the folks in the community, and some of my students had been themselves harassed and were involved in some, so. But what became immediately clear was that the uprising was being used to recertify and legitimize an already ignoble Black leadership. So whether it was Jamal Bryant or Al Sharpton or whomever else.
Jay-Z at the bottom of the bridge when the protesters in Brooklyn, and he said,
Wow.
Or saying the age of kneeling is over.
Yeah. So Jay-Z, yeah, I mean, that was an amazing moment where Jay-Z is talking to Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, and telling him this man making 40 million a year who hasn't tackled, hit, run one route, thrown one ball, getting paid 40 million a year to sit on top and rule this thing. Jay-Z tells him, you know, we're past the age of kneeling. We're moving into ownership, he said, with his, and then as he reiterated in his recent interview, if I own 0.00000% of the Nets, that's black owned. How come nobody raises an eyebrow when Elon Musk only owns 20% of such and such? They don't say that that's white owned. And I was like, wow, this isn't explaining anything. But what gets reaffirmed is Jay-Z as to certain segments of the community as Jay-Z as a legitimate spokesperson. Sharpton, Jamal Bryant, they get reaffirmed. And then of course the establishment press and its political representatives are happy to have Black revolution and Black anger and uproar distilled through their favorite selected Black leaders. So yeah, you set me up to fail for sure with that intro, but with the lead up. But that's really that is how I see it, and it in many ways reminds me of this book written by a white Cornell scholar called Boycott, that got some new attention after George Floyd's killing. And the book itself, I think, mythologizes the history of the boycott. And it takes it away from, or has it be the replacement for actual radical political movements that became the threats to this society that they were, that led to many of the symbolic and surface level changes that we've gotten, that then get rebranded or promoted under the guise of less sufficient or less efficient efforts like boycotts. In other words, giving re-legitimacy to an ignoble, inappropriate form of leadership and movement. And I find that frustrating. That's all. Yeah.
Well, like the street credit given to somebody who had a summer as a community organizer. Right? And you know a lot of Chicago, because in Chicago they were like community organizing. Almost Fred Hampton.
He was basically Fred Hampton.
Right.
Basically.
And so that protest question is an important one, because people are using that to say, look what I did for 6 days.
Yeah.
Right. I was in Ferguson. You in Ferguson? I was there for 3 days. And then I came back and I ran because I realized the problem. Vote for my campaign in Boston.
Look, you mentioned him earlier, Mr. Porter. Tom Porter says, you know, one of my favorite things that he says is having himself been on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. He said, if everybody who claimed to have been on that bridge was actually on that bridge, it would have collapsed. And I feel like we're living in that generational moment today. It's like, I was out there for George Floyd. I was out there for Sean Bell. I was out there for Abner Louima. I was out, and and all we end up doing is just listing off the dead. And then what happens next? What happens next? Because if you were really there, and if you were really there doing what we really should all be doing, myself included, because I wasn't there for none of them, we might not be in this same problem. So, yeah, I at least want to continue to advocate for that. Yeah. Sorry, yes, please, go ahead.
I know you spoke on it a bit in the first edition, but what is your response to people who agree with the Black Blind Power movement, say that our Black people's financial shortcomings are partially on our own fault, and we can go more like X group or Y group in that response?
So as I was saying earlier to this other question, nowadays my first response is, where do you get that claim? Defend the claim. What evidence are you working with? Because, you know, I can at least say, for all of its shortcomings and flaws, my book, the data is there, the argument is there, the details are there. So I am at least confident enough to say that if you read my book, there is no way to return to a belief in buying power unless you willfully just reject all of my claims and my data and my argument, in which case I would then say, what evidence do you have? And I'm still waiting for everybody, everywhere, someone to say, I've read your book, here's why it's wrong, and here I'm going to detail all of its errors. The only people who publicly say that they don't like my work or my book are people who also say they haven't read it. So that's why I have to answer it in that way. Similarly, I would point to, and it was raised a minute ago, big shout out to Sudeep Bhattacharya, who I'm doing this Donut King project with, on making comparisons between Asian claims around Asian economics and Black claims about Black economics. That this idea that Asians have it all figured out and are the model minority and this, that, and the third. And if Black people were more like Asians, and one day I'm gonna do the Jews one. If Black people are more like Jews, I'll get to that later. But the point being, Black people cannot do what other groups have done because A, what is mythologized about those other groups is not real. And B, Black people are not those other groups. And as I said a moment ago, Black people do have a particular relationship historically and contemporarily with this society. So to say, do what someone else did to achieve what they are mythologized to have achieved is not possible. So again, I just have to keep coming back to, where's your evidence? And again, I can't think of an exception to this point that there's never a response other than, well, it's just real. I just heard it. And it's like, well, no.
What is the origin of that? Like,
Of,
that exists now? Buying power.
I mean,
that's the question he's asking is, where is this stuff coming from?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm so, maybe I'm okay. So historically, very quickly, the myth of the claims around buying power are offshoots of cost of living surveys from the turn of the 20th century, where the goal was to figure out, how do we get all these workers to stop rebelling? And the point was, how do we figure out how much people earn so that we can pay them just enough to need the job, buy what they help produce in the economy, but still have to go back to work? And we don't pay them, we pay them not too little so they quit and rebel, but not too much that they feel like, or they dip into our profits. Longer story short, Black versions of that were evolved, particularly after the Second World War, involving the Black press, some segments of the Black bourgeoisie, the federal government, the corporate advertising, marketing, ruling elite, with the goal of creating this idea that buying power is a solution and Black people could solve all of their crises were they more financially literate. Mostly all of those claims come from the Selig Center, more recently Nielsen, and most recently the McKinsey and Company. All of them are based on flawed methodology that I talk about in the book. All of them are what they call estimates and projections, and all of them are done with the design of trying to save capitalism and stop Black people from becoming threats to capitalism. So I just try to walk people through, how did you reach these claims? How do you get your information? What are you reading? What is your media diet like that would allow you to look at all of this research, data, and argument and then say, no, it's wrong because I saw it reported over here. And because this Black pundit said it, because this leader said it, it got regurgitated in this outlet. So it must be real. So all I've been trying to do is get people to lift the hood, check the footnotes, ask where these claims are coming from. And then it's very simple. It's really easily seen that they're not real. And then the more difficult part is, well, how do we get people to move past the propaganda? And that's what kind of we've been talking about this evening. And I'm very much grateful for it, by the way. So I hope that was helpful on some level.
So any more questions in the chat? Because I wanted to ask the question.
Yeah, and I know I think we do have to start. I know we do not have an hour. We got 10 minutes. No, thank you.
When you say it's a political response issue, I was speaking myself, obviously, but political doesn't sound strong enough. It doesn't sound strong enough. And also, it may put people's mind into towards it could be more. I think we have to realize we're all victims. I could use a prisoner of war, but it's because I'm present on site to say what's the response to this one problem will be the panacea to all of them. Like, we have to understand where we are on this board. Us and our framing has to be so wide to counter all the things. Because I hate to say that, like we're up against right now 4 NBA playoff games. So even that aspect about there's more people in
For
here
real?
having this discussion.
Well, what's the score?
The solutions that we're talking about can benefit the greater populace versus, oh, let's go to the bar. Because like there's so much that we're up against. So when I hear the political response, it seems like it's limiting in what it takes to actually combat something so diabolical.
I think I understand your point. I think I agree. And when I'm saying political, I'm maybe need to be more clear. I'm in my mind referencing what I've heard again, Daruba bin Wahad and others say for years that we're being given spiritual, mystical, mythological solutions for political problems, meaning that by political meaning what impacts the material lived experience of the people, what determines through public policy, through societal order, what happens. So what I don't mean when I'm saying it's a political issue is that we return to the conventional approach that of politics, voting for the two parties, lesser evil, da 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 da. I am advocating, and intentionally some ways being vague, to say that the goal should be political power, the ability to define phenomena, have it act in the desired manner, as I still like that Panther definition. But the point being that to have the ability to say, if we need healthcare, this is how we can, through public policy and backing through power, implement it. If we need the police to act differently, we have now the political power to set policy and enact that policy to stop the police from doing what they're doing. And what that requires is a different form of organization and an approach than we're encouraged to have, and that many of us, myself included, often bring to the table. Please go ahead. Yeah, no, go ahead. Go ahead. That's okay. First of all, look. I'd be very happy to get a critique from you and from those in this room, so I don't have a problem with that. But and I understand your point, but I also am hearing in that, whether you meant it in this way or not, that I am at times not clear enough when giving my answers. And I think maybe potentially, but I want to be clear that I am advocating that we move past these narrative claims and engage politics in a very different way. Yeah, but thank you for that. Definitely thank you for that. I do know we're supposed to wrap at 7 and we're approaching that. Are there any other pressing thoughts, comments, questions? I'm looking at the chat here as well. Yes, please. Can you give her your mic? I was talking to her. Okay. Got it.
I was going to ask, regards to Target boycott, she really broke it down really well.
She did.
So, a lot of times when I'm speaking to people, I'm just flabbergasted. I don't have the right word to say the right time. So I don't have the time to break down the history of everything going on, right? So I just have, I guess, a question like if she could pretty much break down, or if you have anything about how you guys do your research, that would be great. A lot of times things are just flying here and there.
So I mean, Renee, and again, I'm talking about Saturdays with Renee on Black Liberation Media, 11 to 1 Eastern every Saturday. Please check it out. All I see of Renee's research is what ends up in the spreadsheet and in the notes. So how she compiles that necessarily, I don't even claim to know the secret sauce and the recipe. I just see the outcome. But essentially, it is the way I mean, it's oversimplified, but it's essentially just looking carefully at the claims and then following up. Sometimes it's just a matter of looking at the footnotes in the claims and then reading what's in the footnote to see what is and is not being reported accurately. But it's also that I think what she and I both do that works is we start with the outcome question first. How is whatever you're claiming supposed to benefit the majority of the working people and the people in the community? And when you start from that, so many other things become less complicated in unearthing. And then she just looked at, I mean, I don't even remember what data she was mining initially, but she was just showing who got hired through DEI at Target. Executives. Who didn't get hired? A majority of workers. So DEI just became, ergo, therefore, DEI in terms of Target was just a branding mechanism to allow the company to make more money and reduce the likelihood that Black people would rebel or raise critical questions. So yeah, I mean, but it's that frame that I think that we start with that is important. How, before I understand all the details, how is this supposed to benefit everybody? And 3% increase in executives ain't it. Yeah, and I'm sure there's a better way, more to get to with that, but just keep tuning in, and we can ask Renee to explain a little more on Saturday for sure. Yeah.
Let me add, I think you asked school kids stuff. Like, I need an infographic so I can just give this to somebody, and then they read off the bullet points, and then directs them back to the source, right? Yeah.
That would be cool.
Okay, so I'm not gonna make you to create that infographic.
Thank you, appreciate that. We had a question here, and then I think we can, yeah, go ahead.
I can't wait, so maybe something for me. But while I'm not Jesus, I can read a lot, study a lot. I have a grandchild, and this is exhausting. This beat, this consciousness, I don't like using the revolutionary, because I think it's revolutionary in itself. But for those of us who are conscious and awake, James Baldwin said to be Black in this country is to be completely
A constant state of rage.
all
Yeah.
of the time. It's not healthy. It's not healthy psychologically, it's not healthy physically, they're deregulating everything. So the food is poison, the air is poison, the this is poison, and that's poison. We're poisonous to each other. I'm wondering what you think about the concept of leaving this place. Now, I don't know where the promised land is. I don't know where Wakanda is. I wish I could create it. But it's clear to me, I've only been here, I'm not saying I don't know, but I've been here for a minute. And it's clear to me that these people are never going to last rest. And I'm talking about the people among us who are confused and have bought in. Is that we're more 24 hours from within and from without. It is exhausting. And I read the books. I read your book yet. I've read many. I study. My family, I get on their nerves. I'm always telling them stuff. I want to talk about political stuff. I want to talk about what Jay-Z is doing and who's sleeping with who. That doesn't make sense to me. I'm trying to stay away, but this is exhausting. So what do you think about the concept of getting the best in the race? Was a Black man in the business, was a Black woman that created the technology to do the GPS. We have done so much. And wouldn't it be nice if we took our intelligence and our brilliance and our money somewhere else in 30 years? Didn't have to live like this.
So the only, I mean, the problem I have with your idea is that, first of all, Wakanda is a fantasy that all of us should want to condemn. No, but but it's not a promised land for us. That's the point. There is no promised land for us. That's my point. That's why the problem. So all that you're saying, that you're complaining about saying to your daughter, would be necessary to create this Wakandan fantasy elsewhere. So and the goal would be one I'm not interested in. I am hostile, aggressively hostile to the idea of a Wakanda, this magical place where a handful of Black people live in seclusion, keeping all their resources for themselves while the rest of their people on the planet are sacrificed. But I'm just hearing, that's what I hear. So that's why but that's my point. That's the fantasy. That is a fantasy that requires the work that we're all struggling to and tired of struggling with to achieve, and it would be necessary. So this brother Jabari that used to be in these spaces back in the day when I was, I don't know if he's still out here doing his thing, but he, in every meeting, he would stand up and say, it's political necessity that every Black person have a functional passport. And I agree. I dusted mine off this morning. It stays ready. I'm pre-checked too. The problem, all of that, I'm gonna get clear. I'm going through all of it, I'm doing all of it. The problem though is it doesn't solve anything. Where am I gonna go? So that's why when Netfa was talking about what are these political aspirations for a global international movement, that's what we would need to have. That's why Che left Cuba. You can't just do it. You can't just have one little place. That's the problem. And wherever we go, we're going to be chased down. So I know that's insufficient. I know we got to go, but I thank you. I thank everybody for being here tonight. Thank you all for being online. This has been dope. Thanks to Dr. Bolden. Thanks to Dr. Burrows. Thanks to Pam and Bus Boys. Appreciate you. Sure.
I want to ask the question and let me close, right?
Okay.
Okay, so your first book was a dedication to the work of Steve Biko. Your in-between book was a dedication to defending Malcolm X. Your next book is inspired by George Jackson's book list. Where are you going next? Who else is in that pantheon of people who engage revolutionary warfare against the system? Where would you direct folks to get, or what would you like to see somebody in this audience write? Probably the brother with the infographic or the online chat book.
Yeah, I don't, because I won't remember. I just want to encourage everybody to support these alternative media outlets: Black Liberation Media, WPFW, and others that I'm not remembering that are in our constellation. Okay. We already said everybody's already committed to never stopping watching my show, so we already took care of that. No, but the reality is that I think that the goal of my work and those that I've mentioned and that I work with, that we all work with, the goal is to create a different Black radical public sphere where these ideas and concepts can be discussed, debated, and shared and encouraged. I always mention, of course, well, look, on Monday, shout out to Noel Hanrahan and Prison Radio. We're going to be taping a new segment with Mumia. So we have to be promoting public Mumia and political prisoners and commemorating those we've already lost. I mean, even, Assata passed away. That we have to continue to commemorate her because we want to inspire and encourage a certain set of politics among people who are going to have to continue to struggle and unfortunately likely create a new wave of political prisoners who will have to be defended and advocated and supported. And freed. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Absolutely. So, there's a lot of great work. I would like to, the first name that came to my mind actually was, as you were talking about, is I would love to do a project involving the work of Lister Velt Middleton, who I know a lot of people don't know, but was a brilliant poet and Black journalist in South Carolina who used his public access TV show to do the kind of work that I and others have been copying for years. But people like that, Lister Velt Middleton.
You want to do something
For the People was his show, For the People, exactly. But I would want to raise up people like that who have used their platforms and their work in many unsung ways to promote and encourage more radicalism and African liberation and beyond. So insufficient answer to a great question. So I thank you for being here to ask it. I encourage people to continue to engage our constellation of work to get better answers to the ones I've given here tonight. And again, I'm just grateful. This has been fantastic. I thank you all very much for coming out. And as always, peace. As long as you're willing to fight for it, as Fred Hampton used to say. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And what did you sacrifice? Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago for which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, that set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything, 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 everything.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.